Hello, Internet. My name is the Golden Stalfos, and today I'm going to talk to you about Cyberpunk 2077. Um, it's not as good as I thought it would be. Um, so, I heard a lot of people complaining about the game being really buggy at launch, even though the launch was delayed several times for bug fixes. Um, which, par for the fucking course, honestly. But like I had a little bit of faith in CD Projekt Red because it's CD Projekt Red, and I kind of assumed that if they were delaying the game to fix bugs, then that would mean the bugs were fixed. But I guess not. I don't know. I didn't really notice many bugs when I was playing on PC. I had one like phantom cell phone floating in midair, and that was about it. But but apparently it's been much worse on console. Um, I bought the game the day it came out, and then I played it. And after about an hour and a half, I hadn't had fun like at all. The character creation menu was a little bit interesting, especially because they have like fully animated genitalia and shit, um, which is on by default. I found out. So, you know, like when you're when you're deciding whether you're going to start with a male template or a female template, both templates are fully like covered with the default underwear shit. But then when you go into the editor, they remove that and you have to switch it back on. So that was a fun little moment um, during my stream. And yeah. I mean, personally, I don't have a problem with that. Like, as a concept, it's something I've wanted for a long time in video games just because, like, it looks stupid and dumb when you're customizing your character and you just have this shitty, like, brown underwear wraparound thing. Like, come on, get rid of that shit. Let us let us play the character like down to the skin, and then we can equip some shitty underwear of a different style if we feel like it. Um, yeah, I mean, I felt like Monster Hunter had a decent compromise on that because, they have underwear, but you get to pick the style when you're doing your character creation, which is fine. Um, but, I do like the balls on a 3D game developer to just be like, yeah, fuck it, our characters have everything hanging out. Deal with it. Um, of course, you can turn it off, but what? Anyway, it's nice to have the option, I guess, is what I'm saying. But that's about the best thing I can say about the game, because after playing it for an hour and a half, I was bored out of my fucking skull the whole time, and Steam doesn't let you keep a game for more than 2 hours and then get your money back. So, so I had to make a judgment call. Like, do I want to spend $60 on a game that might not get any better than this just because of the company's track record? Or do I want to say, you know what, I've invested an hour and a half in this and it's still not good, so I want my money back? um, and I decided to get my money back. So, yeah. I mean, gameplay wise, it's. The menus are a little bit. Yeah. Even if you're using a controller, it still, like, wants to move the cursor around as if you were using a mouse, which is dumb. Like, even The Witcher 3 didn't make that mistake. I don't know why they felt like that was a reasonable way to do their menus. Um, I mean, maybe it's because Assassin's Creed did that same bullshit when they when they did like the Origins. Um, I don't know if they're still doing their menus like that, but in Origins, the uh, the menus were clearly built for PC first, but the game is built for controller. So the menus just have like a faux mouse icon that you move around with your joystick, which is so bad. Like, just let me navigate the menus with my controller, you fuckstick. Um, so yeah, I'm surprised that CD Projekt Red would take that design cue and just make their menus shittier. I guess I don't know why they would do that. Um, Also, the way the mouse moves around in the menu is not that great. Um, Although a much bigger issue here is the game's like structure. So for one thing, the game has controls for both first person and third person mode, but I was never able to unlock third person mode. I guess you have to get through enough of the game first, which is completely fucking stupid. Um, Also all of their highly immersive cutscenes and whatnot are a lot less immersive in first person. Um, they just are. Like I get why it's in first person because you know it's cyberpunk, it's a shooter, first person shooter. But like first of all, as a shooter, it's pretty mediocre. Um, like admittedly, I only played through the shooting parts in the tutorial and then that one room where you rescue the lady in the bathtub. But in both those cases, like the shooting doesn't feel very good. Um, like it just doesn't. I tried using the mouse. I tried amping the sensitivity on the mouse, which helped a lot. But like it just didn't feel good. It didn't feel good to shoot enemies. The damage didn't like seem to match up with the fact that a fucking bullet is going through your skull. Um, like seriously, I could get 5 headshots in a row on some of these enemies and still they'd be alive, and I'm just like, I hate shit like this. Um, but overall the gunplay just felt crap, and it didn't feel like the aim was very accurate either. Um, so yeah, I mean I'm not a huge fan of shooters, but I've played a few, and I gotta say I would much rather play something like Borderlands compared to this, you know. Um, so yeah, not super into it, and but also like because I can't see my character's face and everything, all of the dialogue feels shit, right? Like in The Witcher, you have realistic conversations between two characters. Whenever Geralt is sitting down talking to someone, you can go back and forth between them. You can see them both sitting there. It's like a TV show, right? Like watching a TV show where you can get really invested in the characters. But in this, like like the first person is supposed to be an immersive thing where you can put yourself inside the character or whatever, but like I've never really understood that, and for me at least, not being able to see the character just made it feel like I'm a passive observer floating in the void, listening to the one person I can see and one person I can't see, neither of whom I really have any control over, you know? And it just felt really like boring. Also, I didn't feel like the timed conversation interactions were anywhere near as meaningful. Um, you know, it was just like whatever. And the story in general was utterly pointless. like you spend the first 40 minutes of the game like with your character, and you're in a bar, and you talk to a couple of different characters and you walk around and shit. And then you go to pull off this heist, I guess, right? So you go to do that, and it gets interrupted. And I actually don't know if the story's the same for everyone who plays it. I picked the street kid background, and it felt like there were parts of the story that were very specific to that background. So uh, it could be that there are multiple intros, um, but I don't know because I didn't play it long enough to try out the different ones. But in any case, in this intro, you spend 40 minutes going back and forth, being all like, yeah, I'm, the badass around here. This is my town. I grew up here. I'm such a great local criminal. And then your job gets interrupted by some douchebag. And then the cops show up and arrest both of you. And then they just chuck you outside because the owner is like, I don't have time to press charges. I'm like, that's not how it works, but whatever. Um, you know. And then the other dude is like, hey, you want to hang out? We just survived some shit together, so now we're cool. And and then, after you spent 40 minutes just, talking to characters and getting to this point, it skips ahead a year and a fucking half in a single montage that takes like 10 seconds. And then you start in the middle of a job that you're doing with this new guy. And I'm like, okay, a couple of questions here. One, why did I need to do any of that other bullshit? Why couldn't I have just started at the end of the montage? Like why couldn't you just say, "Oh, hey, you're here and this is your friend and you guys are criminals together and your goal is to rescue this chick from the fucking chop shop." Like, just do that. Why did I need 40 minutes of random crap with characters I have no interest in before that? Like, God. And it also has the problem if every character talks to you like they know you and like you should know them. And I'm like, bruh, this is the first 10 seconds of the game. I don't know shit. Like, I forgave that in The Witcher 3 because it's the third in a series, and the series itself started after a set of books, so like of course I'm going to be out of the loop a bit. But this is just awful. Like, why does everyone act like they know me and act like I should know them, and just like, bruh, what, I've been playing this game for 10 seconds. Give me something to work with. uh So anyway, you get to the end of this. Uh, you pull into this job, and the guy is like, "Hey, before we do this, you want to do some training?" Because that's a totally normal thing to say, when you've already strolled up to the place, to your partner you've been working with for a year and a half. Just be like, hey bro, you need a refresher course real quick before we pull this job? But anyway, so then you do the tutorial shit, and oh look, it's got stealth gameplay. I hate stealth games. I made a whole video about why stealth games suck. You know why? It's because the point of stealth is to be is to have the power fantasy, right? The like I am Batman, the unstoppable, undetectable god ninja of this world. But but every stealth game in the world is just like it is more like memorizing patterns, and if you do even the slightest little thing that fucks up, you just reset automatically, right? Like, or you might as well because there's no real way to recover from a fuck up. And so, you know, and so you're like actually just a weak ass little bitch that can't even handle being seen by a camera, or you die. And like that's not fun. That's the exact opposite of the wish fulfillment that video games are meant for. You know? Like, I don't want to be so pathetic that I get killed by a camera's line of sight. I want to be the boss, you know? Anyway, so you have shitty stealth gameplay. Like, you don't even have vision cones or a sound indicator or a shadow indicator or anything. It's just the most bare minimum. You know, if you're crouching and there's something between you and them, then you're probably fine. But I don't know. Fuck it. Here, walk around these enemies. And it's so bad. I hate it. Then there's a hacking minigame, which is basically just, you know, enter your hacking mode, point at an object that can be hacked, and then press the use button. So, same hacking minigame that's in every game, and it's always shit. Um, you know, like this is just the kind of uninspired generic crap that I would expect from like Watch Dogs. You know. I actually haven't even played Watch Dogs. I don't know what the hacking minigames are like in that, but I assume it's basic as fuck because Ubisoft can't be bothered. Um, you know, and you get a combat tutorial, and it's one of those annoying tutorials where, you know, you have to do the thing 3 times, and then it respawns the enemy, and then you have to do the next thing 3 times, then you just have to go through the entire fucking list of things you can do, instead of just being like, here are your controls, here's an enemy, figure it the fuck out. Which I think would be much more enjoyable. You know? But whatever. Um, the feeling of melee combat isn't bad. Uh, like it's pretty tactile when you punch someone. They do like flip over and shit. But your camera doesn't track the enemy. You're not locked onto them, and there's no way, as far as I can tell, to lock onto them. So, you know, when you punch someone and they go reeling and slip down like 30 degrees past your, you know, line of sight, now suddenly your combo is you're just hitting dead air, and it's just so dumb. Like, I want to follow the enemy as I attack them. That's why I'm, you know, ugh. So that could be done better. Um, and, you know, between the kind of lackluster combat, the story that takes forever to go nowhere, or, you know, to just get to the point where it should have started in the first place, and the just generally, like, not that interesting anything going on, I was bored the whole time. You've got, I mean, there's just nothing there. You know, like, I mean, maybe it gets better. You know, maybe by the time you run into Keanu Reeves, everyone's having a great time. But I haven't got there yet. and I couldn't get there because, you know, like, I'm not gonna risk 60 fucking bucks on this game if it never gets any better than that. Because so far it's pretty shit. Um, they, like, it's just all there is to it. Also, like, one thing that I would really expect from, you know, a cyberpunk style game is free running, just because that's a very, like, fuck it, we don't listen to the rules type of, you know, activity, you know, or like skateboarding. I mean, I guess that's, I guess like BMX type stuff has been normalized for a while now, but it started out as a like punk counterculture thing. Um, and so like to me, the fact that nothing like that is in the game, one, makes movement boring because you can't really do anything except run forward. And I guess you can vault over some things, but not everything. Um, and and two, like I I don't know, I just think thematically it would be cool if there were some cool ways to move around in the future instead of, you know, like you've apparently got a jack in your hand that you can use to tap into other people's fucking brains, but we're still just walking around on two legs and driving around in shitty cars. Like, okay. I mean, there's this moment when you get into a car and it does this cool thing where it like it looks like it doesn't have any view of the outside, but then the whole like inner frame just becomes a a view to the outside, so it's not like, you know, so it's not like you have a windshield and some windows. It's like just there is uh, no front of the car in front of you, but of course there is. It's all, you know, high tech shit, and that's a cool idea, I guess. But it's still just a car. You know, it's not that different or interesting compared to, you know, cars in other games or in real life. And I don't know. Personally, I think a cyberpunk aesthetic is kind of completely wasted if you don't explore what cool new tech the punks are using. And so far as I can tell, it's just guns, the same sort of magic hacking bullshit you can do in Watch Dogs, and um, that's about it. You have magic health restoring inhalers. That's a thing. Uh, it's just dumb, you know. I guess your cell phone is built into your skull or something. I don't know. There's this moment when a character is reading from a magazine, and the magazine page has a screen, and like there's, you know, like a thing moving around on it, and I'm just like, that's never gonna happen. And first of all, magazines already basically don't exist. They're not gonna be brought back with expensive screens in them. That's ridiculous. But second of all, like, we already have a way to read magazines with a screen. It's called a tablet. What the fuck are you doing? Like, why wouldn't he just have a tablet? I don't. This is only supposed to be 50 years in the future. Did it. Who made this? Who thought that was a good idea? And that, you know, like they show it off to you in such a impressive, like it's such a cool thing, and it's supposed to be so impressive. But like, how could that possibly be economically viable? Right? Like, what company is going to print magazines and just have like one page that has a screen on it and just plays an animation of their ad? Like, that's, you couldn't make money with that. It would make so much more sense to just digitally publish your magazine in a format where people can read it on their phones and tablets, you know? Uh, if you wanted to show us something like high tech and impressive, then just like have the dude have a hologram projector in the side of his eye. You know, I mean that's not original, but like it would at least be more cyberpunkish. I don't know. I didn't really get any of the elements of this game. The Witcher 3 was the best cinematic experience I've ever had with a video game, and it's just incredible. The faces, the dialogue, everything was so good, and everything like clicked together really well. The only bad thing about it was the shitty combat. Like that was it. The control scheme and the shitty combat governed by that control scheme. And the fact that like you had to switch control schemes when you're in combat and out of combat, and like so you can't run from the shitty combat because once you're in combat you don't have a run button anymore. Like, gotcha, I guess. Um, but I figured if they played like any other game that has both movement and combat, then they could adapt that control scheme and have a game that isn't completely unplayable for all of the non-cutscene stuff. And and I assumed that they would do that, and Cyberpunk 2077 would be a huge step up for them and be like their best game yet. Maybe some people think that it is, but for me at least, it was a boring waste of time. you know, I I didn't get anything good out of it. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe if enough people watch this and are like, hey, you really should try it out for longer than that. The intro is boring as shit, and that makes replaying it hard. But but once you get past that, you can do this, and it's fun. Maybe there is something like that. I'm open to that. But man, they buried the lead if that's the case. They didn't have to. I mean, The Witcher 3 was good right off the bat. The Witcher 1 was bad right off the bat. It has really terrible interface. Um, and also The Witcher 2 is not that great interface wise. Um, but The Witcher 3, like the moment I started, and I was running around with Geralt, trying to do training and all that, like, yeah, it was good. And you start off with this like really impressive cutscene when you get to see some sexiness, and then you go in and you do your training thing, and you can skip it if you feel like it. And then you have a conversation with the old man, and sort of like learn about the world and shit through that conversation. And then you go into town and you talk to the villagers and you fight a griffin and you talk to the guards and you do all this shit. And like you're having fun, you're doing stuff. And like sure, it takes a little bit to get to the point where the world opens up, but it doesn't take a little bit to get to the point where you're controlling the character and doing things. Because that point happens automatically, right? And so like it seems weird to me that I spent the first hour of my playtime before I even like knew what kind of combat the game had. you know um that just seems like very poorly paced, and I don't get it. And also I would hate to have to go through that every time I boot up the game if it's a game I really, you know, if it was a game I really enjoyed and wanted to replay. Having a fucking hour and a half long intro where nothing interesting happens, probably closer to 2 or 3 hours, given the fact that I got through that intro. Um, there was probably more boring stuff on the other side of it, if I'm being honest, and that's why I didn't want to keep going. Um, but like, if it's gonna be boring for that long, it's gonna make it really hard to go back to. And I mean, The Witcher 3 is already kind of hard to go back to because it's so story driven, and you only really go back to it to, you know, do slightly different things. The story doesn't hit the same way the second time. But yeah, I just didn't enjoy the game all that much. Um, it just wasn't interesting. Um, so yeah, honestly, I've only got 30 minutes worth of a recording here, so it's possible that my that all of the footage actually, yeah, all the footage I'm going to show in this video has no combat, no interaction with the world, just me walking up to people and pressing the talk button. Um, yeah. Oh, also, one other thing I criticized them for in my stream is no DualShock support. I mean, it technically does support the controller, it reads the inputs, but it doesn't like have DualShock compatible icons for some reason. Um, I don't know why. And also, the icons aren't color coded like they would be for Xbox. So, if you're playing with a controller, and it says press X and it's just a white circle with an X in the middle, you might think, press the X button on my controller. But then nothing happens because what it actually means is press X on your Xbox controller, which is square. Um, and that's fine. Once you figure it out, you can readjust. But, like, you know, at least color code it so I know that's what you mean. Anyway. Or, just have a second set of icons for the DualShock because, like, there are only two fucking controllers in the world for, you can have two sets of icons. It's not that complex. Anyway. Well, okay, it's not just those two. I mean, there's also the Nintendo controllers, but most people don't use those on PC. I mean, you can, they're supported on Steam. And I suppose technically there's the Steam controller, but that just has the same button layout as the Xbox controller. And they're also technically modular controllers, but they tend to mimic the Xbox controller too. So, like, for the most part, you need Xbox and DualShock, and that's about it. And maybe a Nintendo controller if you feel like it, but like that's really it. Um, and so, you know, I feel like supporting a DualShock controller is the bare minimum, is what I'm trying to say. Like, but whatever. So yeah, that is my experience with Cyberpunk 2077. I was very bored the whole time. Uh, Also, as far as character creators go, like, there are a decent number of options, but I didn't feel like I could make any. Like, I felt like it was more limited than it should have been, the character creator. Like, and I also felt like basically no matter what I did, I would have a character that looked fucking ridiculous. And I'm not super into that. Um, like, there is a time and a place for having characters that are intentionally absurd looking. But, I kind of assumed that my character would be in cutscenes and stuff, and I would, you know, have to look at them. And so I wanted to make my character look good and it felt very difficult to do that. Not because they all have Oblivion face, but just because like all of the options are designed to make your character look less visually appealing. Like there's just like 10,000 different settings for face clutter. Like you can have scars and 4 different kinds of freckles and a weird like piece of wiring running through your skull, and you know, all at the same time. And I was just like, nah, I just want a plain blank face to start with, and then I can add those details if I feel like it, you know? But that was not easy to do. So, yeah. Anyway, that's about it. That's not a big deal. I just kind of felt like saying that. But yeah, let me know in the comments down below how you feel about this game. Does it get good at the 4-hour mark? I don't know. Does the writing change? Because it felt very like cliched and uninteresting when I was going through it. Like, I mean, there are definitely moments in The Witcher 3 where it's like, yeah, I've seen this shit before. But there were lots of times when I was like, wow, this is interesting. I am all in, you know? And I felt like that happened a lot more often. And in Cyberpunk, I felt bored the whole time. I'm like, yeah, this is a pretty fucking standard inner city street rat thief character archetype going through a pretty standard plot for such a character, and you know, just you know, also when you're doing your first job with your new best friend a year and a half later, there's like 4 other named characters that he refers to as if you're supposed to know who they are, but they've never been introduced before. Like, why? Why'd you do a montage a year and a half later and then not introduce any of the other characters? What was the point of this? Anyway, yeah, that's my whole thing. Just the game's not very good. So, yeah. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you in the next live. Laters. Hey, thanks for watching the video. If you have any things to say about it, leave those in the comment section. If you like the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, ring the bell, share the video, tell your friends, start a cult, sacrifice your firstborn and paint their skull golden. I don't know, I mean, not that last bit. No human sacrifices. I'm legally liable. None of that shit. But, you know, I got Facebook, Twitter, Twitch. I stream on Mondays. I also have a Patreon, but the obvious caveat with Patreon is you never donate to anyone unless you have money to burn. And if you have money to burn, then why not donate to a charity instead? I've got a few linked in my description at all times. I'm not affiliated with any of them, obviously, but yeah, I just thought they were cool. So, you know, thanks for watching.